So here we find ourselves today venerating flags, bearing symbols which, quite frankly, defile and completely break an understanding which once had value in favor of pitting one against the other. In one sense, the Aztec legend remains as the watered down public cover story for the flag of Mexico. It's really just kind of a misinterpreted, just kind of a ripoff, and really no one really knows what it means. At least not very many people know what it means. However, there exists a deeper meaning to this flag than just the legend of Quetzalcoatl and the Aztec people, which, of course, I'm oversimplifying for the purposes of this presentation, but there are some amazing videos on YouTube and some amazing material online if you want to learn more about the Aztec deity. Now, a meaning which, when observed closely, holds up a mirror. So true meaning really holds up a mirror to the modern human psyche. And when I'm talking about the meaning of this flag, I'm going to talk about the meaning in terms of our modern day world and the legacy, especially the legacy inherited by the people of Mexico. And I'm going to talk about the desperate crisis that we find ourselves in today. And this crisis I'm referring to is the war mankind has waged against nature and subsequently himself. Both the creative force, which is, the divine feminine, which has brought us into being, as well as the destructive force, which will eventually return us to where we came from, has surreptitiously become the enemy of modern man. The subsequent abandonment of the gods in favor of mankind's ascension as the masters of the universe, as Nietzsche so prophetically warned against, has resulted in a power vacuum and subsequent existential war between the human virtues of power and wisdom. In other words, the metaphysical quest of the masculine finds itself in a desperate and fearful situation. It's not difficult to understand that we suffer the consequences of our technological apathy and the dominance of the corporate monoculture as it works tirelessly to wipe every trace of the unique indigenous elements of humanity from this planet. After all, the old ways of our so-called savage and superstitious ancestors have nothing at all relevant to offer us in terms of our own lives, right? How can the timeless wisdom of the world bring anything at all of benefit as we prepare to conquer space and welcome in the age of artificial intelligence? If you want evidence of mankind waging war against himself, all we must do is look at the attitudes of the Mexican people toward indigenous cultures. The less native-looking one person is, and the more Spanish-looking one is, the better. Now, people may not say this outright, but this is an unconscious reality that's inescapable. And this means that privilege and opportunity are afforded to the mestizo people who lean more European than people that maybe look more native. They may look more indigenous. Mexico has had an absolutely horrible track record with respect to its treatment of indigenous peoples. The unconscious attitudes of your average Mexican are the unconscious reflection of their Spanish colonizers. And the Spanish, as brutal as they were, have absolutely nothing on the corporate oligarchy of today. Like, they're just amateurs compared to what's happening with corporatism today. However, as far as we have seemingly progressed in our technological evolution in recent times, there is something that the snake knows that the eagle will never understand. And that is that no matter how hard the eagle tries to become a god in its own right, it will ultimately fail. Artificial intelligence will never arrive. It's never going to happen. There are scientific reasons for that as well. Much less, AI is not going to save us from all of the problems from which our technology first created. That's just a logical. You can't create something that will save you with your own technology that is clearly destroying you. It just doesn't make any sense. So our conquest of the solar system, our supposed future conquest of the solar system, and colonization of the moon and Mars won't amount to much more than perilous scientific expeditions at best. The reason this is doomed to failure, and I really don't want to be a doubting Thomas or a pessimist here, but the reason this is doomed to failure is because without the solid foundations, and I love science, I want us to go to space and do this and really make it happen and terraform and all that stuff. Sure, I'm all for it. Okay, but we're missing something. And that is, without the solid foundations of a true and authentic cultural identity, humanity remains hopelessly tethered to the meaningless whims of corporatism. Most of us intuitively sense just how absolutely nauseating an idea of corporate culture is in the first place. Every time I hear, I can't even look at this image. Every time I hear someone talk about culture in the term, in respect of somehow relating to a company or a corporation, I just want to vomit through my eyes. I couldn't think of a worse way for the eagle to inauthentically pretend to be friends with the snake while corporatism simultaneously usurps and undermines what it means to be a human being. The overall sense of despair and hopelessness many of us feel about the state of the world today is precisely commensurate with the spread of this corporate culture ethos into every aspect of our lives. Things in the world actually aren't all that bad, of course, or at least they can be corrected, but corporate culture is most assuredly not the way forward. What many do not realize is that this hopeless excuse for an identity is sold to us in parallel through the corporatized academic establishment as racial and cultural diversity. Now, hear me out on this. Every institution seems to be promoting diversity these days. But has anyone stopped to think about the logical conclusion? Has anyone thought about the unintended consequences at the end of the road of such an idea? If we take diversity to its logical conclusion, what are we left with? What are we left with other than a global monoculture led by the whims of a corporate oligarchy? It seems that the well-intentioned and hard-fought gains made by the civil rights movement of the 1960s may have been co-opted since that time to serve the corporate elite. Maybe it's time for us as a people to think about where this is leading us. But that, of course, is another topic entirely.